What is up, everybody? This is the Fantasy Tattooer. My name is Rowan. Today we're going to be going through and discussing a really fun project that I've been wanting to share with everybody for a while. Thank you to my client Michael, who let me film the tattoo process so that I could just sit down and react or do a reaction style video where I'm just watching and commenting on some of the things that go through my mind while I'm tattooing. Some really important things, just a super quick disclaimer before we get started. This particular video is not for educational purposes, it is strictly for entertainment purposes. So please don't take anything that I say in this video as law. It is more just me talking about how my brain works, and it's more just for clients and for other artists to just get into the mindset of like what kind of things are going through my mind as I do the tattoo process. Yeah, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So these are just the colors I like to use. Just as a general rule of thumb, whenever I'm setting up my color palette, I like to do either warm to cool, cool to warm, or I will put my two complementary colors in my fantasy piece. Just depending on the actual tattoo itself. There are some tattoos have more like green and purple or orange and blue or whatever, so I'll put all of the main colors on this side and then all of the main complementaries on that side, and I'll break it up with gray in the middle a lot of the time, just so that it helps my brain understand that if I'm going from this side of the scale to that side, it's better for me to be passing through that center line, which is going to be your grays. What I'm doing right now in the video is I'm just going ahead and using a very light whippy shading technique where my needle is pretty far out, but I'm barely grazing the surface with just the tip of the needle. It's a liner, and it's what, I don't know if this is what people call it, but in my mind, I'm like, I'm busy sculpting lines here. I'm busy sculpting what I want the edges to look like. It's a little bit of freehanding, but not enough for it to be considered a freehand tattoo, obviously. So yeah, I'm just going in, doing a light gray wash with black and some water. So this is using that same technique where I'm just doing that pendulum motion. But I guess the equivalent of this in oil painting would be called like glazing. So I'm not hardcore committing by color packing in a certain color or tone. I'm more taking a darker color. I think at this point I either have black on its own or black mixed with a little bit of like a magenta or a pure magenta or pure red, something like that, a more transparent color on top of black, and just brushing it in really lightly to tint the overall look and feel of the tattoo in that area. This right here is a lot more of like a color packing. I'm going in with a more opaque light color, and I'm just color packing that in with a round shader. So this is also me just exaggerating what I already have, which sometimes, like when you do layers on a tattoo, it is going to hurt a little bit more as well. But it can brighten up some of those areas that may have healed out in the past. And so sometimes when I'm doing touch-up sessions too, this is the kind of thing I'm targeting. I usually push the darks darker and the lights lighter, and then every once in a while, like I'll look and see, you know, what's faded, but also going in and like pushing your bright tones. Especially like with these very vibrant galaxy glowy kind of tattoos, you're going to have your dark and then you're going to have your mid-tone, which is a lot warmer or brighter or more vibrant, and then you're going to have the neutral color of what that object is. So if it's a star, it would be white, or like a brown if it's a wall or whatever it is, and then you'll have your hot color again and then black, so it creates like more of a nice glowy effect. And so yeah, what I'm doing once again is I'm kind of just using, I think at this point it's a liner again, and I'm using that liner to just tint and bring those shadows a little bit darker. And you'll see sometimes while I'm tattooing, I'll be using more of like a loose packing and whippy shading combo. And this is just something that while I work, I kind of undulate between color packing and soft shading. This helps me get the effects that I want in certain areas without oversaturating certain parts to get like more of a painterly effect. I think the more you use like just a round shader and you put color next to color next to color, you're gonna get more of like a painterly effect. Whereas if you do like the whippy shading, sometimes that can help you blend things a little bit more naturally and easier. Now, bear in mind there are some incredible artists out there who are able to pick their colors so that when they do that painterly technique, it won't come out painterly, it'll come out super realistic because they're just so good at their color theory. So yeah, once again, by all means, that doesn't mean that because you're using this style, it's not going to be realistic. It just means I personally find it much easier to achieve like a more smooth shading with that whippy shading. But yeah, we're just going and sculpting those edges, getting that nice high contrast, especially since in this area right now that I'm working on, you can see how there's a bright blue right next to a bright orange and red. If I just had like a solid, bright, vibrant blue right next to that orange, it would hurt my eyes a little bit, I think. So breaking it up with a neutral tone, like a gray or a black, or just a more neutral color, will help a lot with making that look appealing to the eye in a way that it doesn't clash. It creates harmony or balance. So okay, so at this point I'm just busy. I think I sped this up by like, I think I typed in 1,000 on Premiere when I edited this part. Basically, this is me establishing anchor points, or what I would call as anchor points. They're basically points that I have determined on the fly. You know, when I was starting out, I would actually plan this out on paper and I'd write it down and I'd sit and think about it. But, you know, while you're tattooing, anchor points are basically, if my stencil were to disappear entirely, it would be okay because I've got these points. So they don't have to be dark. There are some artists that do mid-tones first and then they do lights and darks. There are others who go light tones and then they go to their darks. And then there's me, I tend to lean more towards dark to light. So my anchor points tend to be shadow areas, detailed spots. So like you can see in the video, I have like the shadows all blocked out with like a dark blue. It's not 100% black. And when I'm tattooing these kind of things, I have to be super careful about that, because when you're looking at your reference, especially when it's next to something that's very high contrast, like a bright, vibrant highlight, you could just glance at it and think, oh yeah, that's black. And then you put in your black, and then when you look at your tattoo later down the line, you're like, why is this not looking as realistic or as visually appealing as my reference image? And it's because you've pushed that contrast a little bit too high. So just paying attention to making sure that your anchor points are the right color is very important. It also, what I like about setting up the darks first is you're giving yourself a boundary on how dark or light your midtones in that area should be as well. So here we're just adding on the next color. So you're seeing I'm using like a very dark cobalty blue kind of color, which can be mixed using like a purple and a blue, especially those purer colors. Like with Sacred Ink, they have like a pure purple and a pure blue, which do lean more transparent. So if you're going to be doing that and you're putting it into a color on its own, you're either going to want to back it up with some kind of black or gray or a more opaque blue. In this case, I think I was using, I forget the name of the color exactly, but it was like a darker blue from their line, and mixing that with just a little bit of pure purple, I think. So it's something that I like playing with the underwater blue kind of colors, where I have like the depth shown through purples in the background, and as it comes closer to the foreground, you start getting some more turquoises, cyans, teals, greens even, maybe some yellows, and that just looks so, looks great, chef's kiss. So, yeah. So, yeah, and then when I push things back into the background, I like to go a little warmer with the blues, which just happens to be more purple. You do have to be careful with purples because I feel like sometimes they can heal a little patchy, so I usually like to back them up with some other color. But surprisingly, I have had some clients with that perfect skin where they come back and I'm actually shocked at how perfectly those purples healed. So it's always nice when your client comes back with the tattoo looking exactly the way it did when you first tattooed it. So as you can see here, I'm kind of using like a neutral color. Neutral colors can either be achieved by mixing the color that you want with gray, or you can mix it with like a complementary color. This is something you kind of have to learn because each ink that gets produced is going to have a different tint to it. So, you know, for example, if you've got like an orangey yellow, that's going to tint a blue differently versus just orange and blue. Or if you're doing like purple and yellow, if you've got a more orangey yellow, that orangey yellow is going to impact the purple differently. So this is more something that when you found the ink that you want to spend the rest of your life with, you're going to want to pay attention to the tints of the inks that you're using when picking your complementary colors, and also just making sure you're picking, you need to be more deliberate about what decisions you're making. So it's like, are we using a transparent color? Are we using an opaque color? All of that kind of thing. Yeah, I just, you know, so one of the things that, and this is just a side note, but one of the things I absolutely adore about tattooing when I'm actually doing it is watching all the little lines getting colored in. I love watching the lines getting colored in. I just sit there and I'm like, yes. Especially if you're like listening to a really fun audiobook or a movie or whatever, music. Just filling in those colors is so satisfying. So you can kind of see when I'm lining, I'm using a round shader, but I'm kind of like pushing it. And that's more just because I find it easier to do it that way. I don't think that that's necessarily like the way to do it. It's more just whenever I'm doing arcs or lines, sometimes like in this case, I find it easier to push the color up. So it was also based off of where I was sitting with respect to the clients. So yes, just these appealing little filling in the holes. That's what she said. That's not quite as fun when you don't have people around you to laugh. You know, so I don't know if anybody else does this, but when I'm painting or drawing and I'm listening to something, I will attribute what I'm painting at the time to the thing I'm listening to. So right now, what I'm watching is reminding me of the audiobook I was listening to. I was listening to Fairy Tale by Stephen King, and not to spoil anything, but there's definitely a part in that book that had me like wanting to bawl my eyes out, and I believe there was a moment somewhere around here where I had to actually pause the book and stop tattooing for a minute, and I was just like that rock meme where I was like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. And then I had to almost like look at the clients and be like, look, oh my god, I am so sorry. That's not the tattoo. The tattoo's looking great. I'm crying because of this stupid book. So, yes, I have not listened to the rest of that book yet because I'm terrified that I'm gonna just stop crying in the middle of the tattoo and people are gonna be like, oh no, she ruined the tattoo. It's like, no, it's not the tattoo, it's the book. Yes, so it's the same as like if you're listening to one of those nice epic fantasy books and you get to that part where it's like kind of spicy, you're like, oh, I really hope that my audiobook doesn't like clip out and go into someone's headphones right now, because I'm gonna be like, oh, don't look at me, please. I don't want you to see what I'm listening to right now. But at the same time, I need to know what happens, so I don't want to change it. Sometimes I'll just like fast forward through it and be like, okay, don't look at my face. But yes. So yeah, we're getting towards the end now. This is just me filling in my midtones, and notice how I'm kind of playing between like my blues, the more vibrant colors, and then the more teal, vibrant teals. Something that you can use to get that really nice underwater look is when you're playing with going from vibrant blue to vibrant teal to like a minty color and then to white. It can look very beautiful and appealing, and then almost tinting your whites to be more orange, so that to the eye it looks like white, but it's actually not, it's more orange. When you do that, sometimes it ends up making the tattoo look just a little bit more contrasted, and can create a more white highlights actually. So if you're using like blue and you put blue with a yellowy tinted highlight versus blue and a white highlight, the orangey tinted highlight will actually look like a brighter white than white, even though if you were to put it under like a photograph and then change the saturation to black and gray, the white highlight would actually be just slightly darker, because of the way the color wheel works and all of that weird stuff. But yes, so even if it'll look slightly darker with black and white, it'll actually look brighter to the eye because of the contrast. So yeah, I just wanted to say, guys, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I know it was a pretty long video. Thank you for listening to me rant for a few minutes. And I hope that you guys have long days and pleasant nights. Please do not forget to hit like and subscribe, and hit the bell icon to notify you whenever I post again, which could be soon, could be not. We'll see. Have a good one, guys. Happy New Year. Bye.